Now we're good. So we, in this session, which is B14, we would like to tell you the story of a school that we consider very special, and what life and work is like in that school. And hopefully we can talk about this idea of a school as a model in the context of this conference. So this, I have to say that this is today, November 4th, 2021, just for the recording session. And so I would like to maybe invite my co-hosts to introduce themselves one at a time very quickly, and then we'll get started.
My name is Richard de la Cuadra. I am the founder of Xavier Academy and currently serve as the head of school.
I'm Josie Paul, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I am entering my 9th year at Xavier Academy as the director of counseling and wellness.
I'm Cooper Paul. I am a previous student of Xavier. I went to Xavier for 3 years, went off to college, returned, and I am now in my 2nd year of teaching government and world geography.
Randy?
Unmute.
Carol, are you there?
I'll go, yeah. I'm Carol Olivero, and I have recently started working at Xavier Academy, and I have a daughter who's been there for 4 years.
And Randy, are you with us?
Yes, I'm Randy Goswick. I teach Algebra 1 and Geometry, and this is my 7th year at Xavier.
And my name is Ilana Reisz, as I said, and this is my 5th year in relationship with the school, a relationship that began with a dialogue, a conversation with Richard. And I've been teaching a course on collaborative leadership, and now I'm working on a number of projects with the school. And so can we start our little story with Richard?
So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here. I had the fortunate opportunity to start Xavier in 2007. And when I did so, even back then, before I knew about constructionist theories and collaborative practices and all the vocabulary that we use presently at Xavier, I did see it as an opportunity to do something different. So we were going to start a school. What opportunities were out there to create something that would fill a need? Little did I know that there was a huge need for a little bit of what we do. So what is it that we do? Xavier Academy is a fully accredited small private school in Houston, Texas, that really focuses on an individual approach, customized education in a sense, where our goal is to meet the needs of our students, our clients, and to do it in a very creative way. So many of us will refer to Xavier as having a relational approach to education. And what does that mean? So one is definitely where connections is a very huge piece to the puzzle, right? Where our students, that they could be connected to, whether it's to other peers, whether it's to their staff members, or people here at school. Our goal is for us to create this very strong bonds with our students and to connect them in some way. Because when students have those strong relationships, one, I think they look forward to coming to school. But two, it also goes a long way towards creating a safe place for all of us, where we can be comfortable being who we are, whatever that may mean, right? So creating a culture of respect, acceptance, coming together, And you'll probably hear some of us refer to what happens here at school as being part of the Xavier family, and really putting into practice those words and ideas that you hear us talk about, right? So what our goal is here is, in a sense, to create this transformational experience that allows us to, that in a sense brings out the best in all of us, where we can create and be willing to try things and see what works and put things together. When I think about Xavier, like one of the realizations I had even this morning is that Xavier really brings together so many different staff members, talents, abilities, creativity, and it's really, in a sense, a puzzle that has so many elements put together. You know, one of the things that's really important at Xavier is making sure that we incorporate all the stakeholders' voices, right? So that means our students, our parents, our teachers, working together and bringing all different ways of being and allowing for all of us to sort of be ourselves, right? Whether that means from a student perspective, being able to make choices, but more importantly, to be respected and be appreciated. So we want to create a place where we really appreciate the other, where we learn to be curious about each other, and really focus on the relationship part. So one of the things that I think many of us will share with you is that because of these connections, coming to work doesn't feel like work. Xavier has become a very special place, I think, for so many of us. And I'll pass it on to the next one.
I'm going to jump in here. Thank you, Richard. Again, I'm Josie Paul, and my story with Xavier began about a little over 9 years ago. We were relocating to Houston in the spring of 2012 when I found Xavier. And my first impression, well, I need to back up. I was looking for a place to live. My husband was retiring from the military and taking a job at Baylor College of Medicine. He wanted to live nearby. So I was kind of scouting out the Westview and Southside Place area. And instead of finding a place to live, I found Xavier. And I walked in, and my very first impression was warmth, kindness, love, and learning. I opened the door, the walls were painted these really rich colors, and the furniture was very rustic and felt more like stepping into someone's home than a school. And Richard's wife was holding their then 14-month-old son in her arms as he slept, while she was fully engaged working with a student on her math, one-on-one. And they were so engaged in what they were doing that the student never even looked up and noticed that there was someone in the room. And if any of you know children and adolescents, they look for any reason to look up and be distracted. So as I was standing there, Richard appeared. He kind of came from the back of the school, and we engaged in conversation. And having taught high school just a few years prior, and having struggled with administrative guidelines and rules that were created with one perspective or truth about how education should be done or how it should occur, it allowed very little to no flexibility. And I was captivated by Richard's progressive ideas, and probably more his resolve to create a space for a different kind of learning, one that's student-centered and an environment that embraces differences and that has a genuine focus on the acquisition of knowledge and the ability to think critically. Xavier was a place where individuality was encouraged. Acceptance is the norm, and students are genuinely cared for. Xavier was providing the educational experience that I was attempting to do when teaching high school, but continually questioned and discouraged by the administration. And at that time, my daughter, who is with us here today, she was 15 years old, and she was training professionally in New York as a ballerina. And we were planning on homeschool curriculum because that would allow the flexibility that she needed to be able to train and still complete her high school years. Once I learned that Xavier's curriculum could be accessed online, and that assignment dates could be adjusted to accommodate her individual needs or students' individual needs, I knew that it was the right fit. and I later enrolled her for the remaining of her 3 years of high school. So the following year, in spring of 2013, I approached Richard with a curiosity that I had. And I asked him what would happen, what he thought would happen if there was a mental health counselor or a therapist at this school that students could make their own appointments with as needed. Would students take advantage of having confidential conversations to process the struggles of adolescence? And would this help to reduce the amount of bullying or violence in schools? And further, if a child's mental health and social and emotional learning was improved, would this correlate to greater success in the classroom? I offered to volunteer my time if Richard would be willing to find a private space for me to meet with students. And you have to know that finding space is always a tough thing because Xavier grows faster than we can expand our classrooms. So, and one of the best things is Richard said, let's try it. That's kind of always his response. Let's try it. We won't know if it'll work or what impact it'll have unless we give it a try. So today we have three therapists on staff, and we have 3 master's level interns who are providing services to our students and their families, and to our staff and their families as well. And what we've learned is that an essential part of providing a successful learning environment for the whole child is in supporting the social and emotional learning of our students and paying particular attention to their mental wellness. Students who are in distress, who are struggling with depression, experiencing high levels of anxiety, etc., are not able to fully engage in their learning processes. And addressing these and the systems in which they occur oftentimes involves inviting families into therapeutic sessions and working with the student and parents together. Sometimes we work with the parents separately. Sometimes we work with the siblings or different combinations of the family. In order to, we've even done marriage counseling. We're all licensed marriage and family therapists, and we've done couples counseling. Sometimes couples are going through a lot of difficulties at home, and it directly impacts the student. And the student's not doing well in school because of the problems that are going on at home. Another thing we try to do is remove the labels and diagnoses, which is a real important aspect of what we do. We want to remove any of the barriers that prevent a student from feeling capable and creative and whole. And so whatever is helpful to reduce tensions in the system, whether that's the system at home or the system in the school, we try to address. And probably one of the most important specific focuses of our counseling and wellness team is to model and assist students in the process of advocating for themselves. Many students, especially those who've had their needs overlooked or they just weren't addressed properly or in a way that was helpful for them, have learned to accept inadequacy. And we want to work with our students to help them identify that which would help them and how to then have the conversations necessary with teachers or administrators to discuss the possibilities. And I guess in closing, I would just say that our relational approach starts at the top. And as I noticed that very first day when I walked into Xavier, warmth, kindness, love, and learning were the defining traits on display. And as our school has grown, our focus has sharpened to ensure that each student and family feels the same kind of welcome that has brought us and kept us all here.
Okay, I'll go next. I'm Randy, the high school math teacher. And I want to echo what some of the things that Josie said, is that when I walked in the door, I knew it was different from any school I'd ever taught in before, because I'd only been in public school and this was not like any school I had seen. The tape, when I walked into a classroom and it looked like a dining room table, it was rustic, but a dining room table that all the students were sitting around, the teacher was sitting with them. We didn't have rows of desks and everything. So I have learned to really love this system. I love sitting with the students and being on the same level with them. They call me by my first name. They don't call me Mr. Goswick. I mean, if anyone says that, it sounds foreign to me now after 7 years. And the administration and the therapists are also fully accessible. So I feel like that we kind of, it's kind of getting rid of the hierarchy that we're used to in traditional schools. One thing, and I also, Richard has given us freedom to be creative. And one thing that I have done is I have my students write a math autobiography. And that is 1 or 2 pages, just free form writing of what they like about math, what they don't like about math, and why, or a teacher that they liked and why they liked him or her, a teacher that they didn't like and why they didn't like him or her. And I gather all this information and I use that in order to guide my teaching of that class, of what helps, what works with them, what doesn't work with them, kind of thing. The most interesting one I've ever gotten came last year from a student, because I tell them they can write it however they want. And she wrote, "Dear Math, I'm afraid, I really hate to do this in a letter, but I'm afraid we have to break up. The other subjects are demanding too much of my time." And it went on, and she used that metaphor all the way through. It was really a cute paper. One thing that I really like about Xavier is the small class size. It's, I like that I can sit around the table and I can see all the kids' faces. And as I'm teaching, I mean, I get up and use the whiteboard every now and then, but as I'm teaching, I can see in their faces if they're getting it or not. And I can know if I need to redo something or if I can move on, that kind of thing. So that's really helpful. The other thing, and the kids, whenever we have a kid come and do a shadow day, when they're testing out if they think they might want to come to Xavier, I always have the kids talk to them and tell them what they like and what they don't like, kind of thing. And they always comes up, no homework, because we have a lot of public schools near us that have the kids do homework until midnight every night. And our kids have no homework, that they get all the work done in class. And that works. At first, it sounds like, when I first came here, I was like, there's no way I can get through a whole math course without homework. But it works because I'm working with the kids, I see if they make a mistake, and I correct it right then. Whereas if they did the homework, they would turn it in the next day, and they wouldn't get the feedback until the following day. So they're two days behind on getting feedback when they can get it instantly if we get it done in class. And plus, the kids that transfer from public school or even other private schools that have homework, they say, "What am I supposed to do in the evening?" I say, "You're supposed to be a kid." One thing that I really appreciate is that Xavier is inclusive. We have kids that identify with the following sexual orientations: straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender male, transgender female, non-binary, pansexual. And I apologize if I left something out, because today is a new day with possibly a new category. But the point is, the kids can be who they really are. They don't have to hide it. And by the way, we have 0 tolerance for bullying. And that's where I'm going to end.
Well, I will take over from here. I'm Cooper. Like my mom said, I am a graduate of Xavier. I graduated in 2015, went off to college as an early childhood education major. I wanted to be an educator before I knew what education was. I used to line up my stuffed animals and teach them. So I just always have known this is what I meant to do. So I was in my major, I approached student teaching, and as I got into those public schools, I kind of panicked and I was like, what are we doing here? This doesn't feel natural. This isn't how we should educate children. So I ran back home, which is to Xavier, to Richard, and discussed with him what my next steps should be, as I knew that I wanted to come back to Xavier with the hopes of teaching elementary school. And we eventually came to the conclusion that I would switch my major to psychology so I could just get done faster, and then I would get some education, like on the job training. And then I ended up teaching social studies to the high schoolers, and I could not be more happy. I might even prefer high schoolers over the kindergartners I wanted to teach, which is surprising. So that's kind of my story of how I got here. And then at the beginning of this in-service for this school year, I came across a quote from Glennon Doyle, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, but the quote was, "In order to be loved, you have to be known." And so my first question to myself was, how can I best see and know my students this year? And by the time, a few weeks had passed and I had entered into the first day of school, my question had evolved into, what can I do to provide an environment for my students to feel safe enough to be truly known by me so that I can effectively love them? And so I think the obvious answer, at least at Xavier, is relationships. But how do I go about that so that it's effective? So I would say the first thing is that when I'm teaching, I try not to teach at them, but I teach with them. So as much as I might be teaching and instructing them, they're teaching me and they're teaching each other as well. So that would be the first thing. And then I also try to value what they want to learn. I teach government. It can be a pretty dry, boring subject. So I try to liven it up as much as possible, with also valuing their interests in the way they want to learn. So with any big assignment, I give several options. They can do whatever feels best for them. If that's writing a research essay, that's fine. If it's creating a music video, that's fine. If it's creating a poster, that's fine. I had one student write an entire rap song about government. And then the other thing, or an example also, is we were learning about Congress. And so I separated my classes into a House and a Senate, and they wrote bills as if they were the House and the Senate for the school though. So some people wrote about how we should structure our days, and other people wrote about getting new chairs. And just some of them were big, some of them were minor. And then they had to write up, 6-page bills, give arguments, give counter arguments, give rebuttals, explain why their bill had actual evidence, why there is a reason behind it. And then those bills were handed off to Richard and David to review. So it empowered them and showed that their opinions have value. And then I would say the other one is kind of echoing what Randy said, is this deconstruction of the hierarchy in our school. So like Randy said, we sit with our students, which is wonderful. They call you by your first name. I also have nicknames for my students, call me nicknames like Coop or Coopy. Some of the boys call me Cooper the Pooper Scooper, but that's okay too. They ask a lot of questions. Some of them, about school stuff, some of them about what college was like. Sometimes it's about drugs, there's a full range of things. And I feel welcoming to those questions and ready to answer them. Being closer to their age is helpful, because I also am on TikTok at 2 a.m. scrolling, watching the same TikToks they're watching. So I found that the key for me is allowing myself to be vulnerable and known by them, invites them to be vulnerable so that I can truly know them. So it's kind of a sharing of vulnerability, which is beautiful. And then one example of this, which I thought was so funny, that happened this year, I was on my way out the door to go chaperone a Camp Eagle trip, which is essentially like a team building camp that has zip lining and rappelling. And we go there for a weekend. And as I was walking out the door, one of my freshmen said, "Bye, Cooper, I love you, I'll miss you." And I was like, since when do teenagers say those things to their teachers? And now it's become a habit that my students will just say, "Okay, Cooper, I love you, bye." Or they just say, "I love you and I miss you," regularly, like I'm a sister. So I think it's really wonderful, the relationships that are built amongst teachers and students. And I would say, as I reflect on my time at Xavier as a student, I felt similarly, that my teachers were just an extension of my family, and I could go to them for anything. And essentially, Xavier didn't just prepare me for college and to do well in college, but it prepared me to do well in life as a whole, especially with what my mom said about advocating for yourself. And that really came in handy in college, but obviously as I ventured out into the real world, that has come in handy as well. So I will hand it over to whoever is next.
Carol is next. And we are running out of time, so because we have a videotape as well.
Okay, I'll go quickly. I've been involved with the school for 4 years now with my daughter, who is 15. She's in 10th grade. She is on the spectrum, and the school where she was before was wonderful, but a lot of the parents, I got a sense from them that they didn't expect much from their kids for the future. I'm not willing to give up on my daughter going to college, having a career. She's very capable. You just have to put some effort into getting to know her. And that's what they did at Xavier. They welcomed her. They met her where she needed to be met, and they have faith in her. I'm sorry. I'm just happy to find a place where she's accepted and loved. You know, she doesn't act like all the other kids all the time, but they let her do it. She goes and sits on the floor. She goes and sings a song and then sits back down, and nobody has a problem with that. And she's incredibly gifted and she's incredibly smart, and nobody treats her like she's less. And so that's what I'm grateful for. And that's my experience with Xavier. I think it's just a gift. It's and the other thing I will add is the therapy aspect of it. I have 3 girls. My other daughter has started coming up and meeting with a therapist because of an incident that happened to her, and she needed some help. And they welcome family members. I said, oh no, I can't bring her up here. She's not a student. And they said, no, we treat the family. We treat the family of our students as our family. And that was overwhelmingly wonderful for me to have that available to me. So that's my experience.
Thanks, Carol. So we would like to leave some time for dialogue with questions if you have, and please post them on the chat if you have any questions or comments. But we'll do our best to make some time for it. I just want to add a little bit about my experience. I don't come from teaching. I was a community-based qualitative researcher working with community-based participatory research and amplifying the voice of community and to get them to participate in addressing their issues. And so my conversations with Richard initially were about how do we do that in a context of a school? How do we make sure everybody participates in the process? And so when I had an idea to maybe do a class, one of Richard's phrases is go for it. And so I did. And we had a very interesting experience of working with students through dialogue, exploring dialogue and exploring developing relationships and their ability to control that process and participate in it. So that was a lovely experience. And I'll be happy to answer questions. Otherwise, let's open it up and see if any of you out there, I can't see you all, let me see. There we go. If any of you have any comments or questions or anything.
Can I ask something?
Absolutely.
Informative. How free is the school to design its own curriculum, its own pace of learning? Are there any constraints that are superordinate? That is the state controlling any of that? Are there any requirements? Does the school have to reply to the state in order to design its own design, or is it completely free to do its own thing?
Happy to take this one, guys. So we are a fully accredited small private school. And as such, we do have guidelines that need to be followed. So our kids need to graduate with meeting certain requirements, state requirements, 4 years of math, 4 years of history, science, and so forth. They've got to meet X number of credits to be able to attend a 4-year college or university. So we are very creative and very flexible at speaking the language of school. And although there are other elements that we can add, we still do have to stay within a framework that either our parents and our teachers and anyone who comes in contact with us has to speak that similar language of school. So yes, where we really differ is in our ability to be creative. So for example,
framework, right? It's only
correct.
framework. I mean, you have to work within this framework, and then you're flexible within the framework.
Yes, correct. And if anyone else wants to add to.
Well, I think, Richard, the proof is in the pudding, right? Talk about graduation and competitive outcomes.
One of the really cool things for us is graduation. At graduation, we give every graduate an opportunity to speak for a minute or two. We don't prep them for what they're going to say. We just, it's there for the students who wish to share. And it's really amazing to hear students tell us their story, their experience, and what they're willing to share, and how vulnerable they're willing to be in a very public space around hundreds of people. And for us as a staff, it's also the culmination of so much of our hard work to be able to see so many of those living examples of knowing where we started with kids and where they are at that moment in graduation as we celebrate their success. We typically graduate anywhere from 35 to 45 students every year. I think for the last 3-4 years, we've had anywhere from $5 to $7 million per graduating class of academic scholarships to our students. I would say quite a few of our graduates end up getting 50% to full ride scholarships to colleges and universities. And our kids are getting into really great schools. Where we differ, though, is that our goal is not to get every kid into an Ivy League school. Our goal is to help our students find a best fit, something that makes sense for them based on so many of their just their individual criteria.
Renee had a question.
No, I would just add something, but what I hear is simply amazing. I really think it's great to hear that you in practice shows us that relationship comes before learning. And when relationships and the feeling of being totally okay and safe increases learning amazingly. So thank you very much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
What is amazing is that, the theory behind it, many people can share the theory behind it, but how do you put it in practice? That's a difficult thing. And that's, as you said, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, how do you really manage to do it in a way that all stakeholders are part of it, and how you can manage students, teachers, head teachers, parents to be happy about it, because that's the crux of the matter, is how can you be happy? Mm-hmm. Happy as a learner and happy as an instructor.
So I just want to chime in with an observation from somebody who just buzzes around the school, is that it's a very dynamic process. I mean, there is not a school year. There is a lot of variation in what goes on in the process of the school year, and constant adjustments, wouldn't you think, Josie or Randy?
Definitely. I was just thinking about how when Randy and Cooper both were talking about how the relationship that they have with the students and how that supports the learning that they're doing. And I think about that in relationship, that's how we create meaning, and that I think it deepens the learning in a level that I think we might be the only school. Well, they're certainly the only school I know of that does things that way, but students will talk almost always the first thing they'll say is they talk about their relationship with their teachers, that their teachers really care about them and they feel safe. They feel safe in the room and they talk about anything they want, but things do change quickly here.
Yeah, I want to go back to something Renee was saying, that I feel that it's completely different result than if I go in and teach a class and ask them to do an assignment, than if I go in and I talk to the kids and they know that I care about them, and I reveal something about me and let them get to know me and then do the assignment. If they like you, they're going to want to do more work for you, and they're going to want to learn because they want to please you. It's just the way humans are.
And Randy, would you say too that one of the important things though in all of this is how sincere all of us who work here are about what we do? Because kids know when you're not being honest.
Oh yeah, definitely. Kids can see right through that.
One thing I want to put out there, if you guys are interested, tomorrow the kids and I will be presenting where I have invited 4 Xavier students, 4 of our high school students, where I'm going to be interviewing them about this relational approach to education. Because there's a lot of theory behind our practices. And so you have a group here today that's informed in some of that, but the kids are not. They don't know social constructionist theory. They don't know any of this language. They just know their lived experiences. And so my curiosity became like, what does that mean to you guys? How have we put these ideas into practice? And then love for people also to ask them. You know, the kids have so much to offer. And that's, I think, one of the incredible things about Xavier is that we know how valuable our kids' input and knowledge and experiences are. And I think that all of us here today can attest to how we have grown as individuals because of the kids we work with and what they have taught us.
Richard,
Where did the name of the school come from? The name of the school, Xavier, what does it come from? What does it mean?
So first of all, let me say that it's not my name because many people think I named it after myself. Xavier, I went to Xavier High School in New York City. And that was one special place for me. My dad's name is Xavier. And then because of my Jesuit education, St. Francis Xavier is someone that I look up to. So that's really where it came from. It was just something that made sense to me.
That's the first thing people ask, is it a Catholic school?
Cooper, can we cue up the video?
I'm ready.
We really want to share this video with you.
Don't we have 15 more minutes?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
15.
Well, we're hoping
do.
that the video will also generate some more curiosity.
Yes.
But if I can share with you really quickly. So we have a student here who is our videographer, school videographer. And when we were planning this session, we just came up with the idea, hey, what if we had a small video, 2-3 minute video that this young man, Zach, could put together for us to just represent, to get the student perspective. So we said, Zach, we need a 2 to 3 minute video. Here are possible 2 or 3 questions and see what you come up with. That's all he got. And now we'll be happy to share what he came up with.
My name's Zach Johnson.
My name's Autumn.
My name is Merce Carter.
I'm Sophie, and I go to Xavier, and I'm a junior.
I would say that the way they educate students is a much better, much more efficient way of doing it. It helps the students stay immersed and have fun, but at the same time take away important knowledge from it. I'd say that's absolutely one of the key bits with Xavier that they have over other schools.
Hi, I'm Sophie. I'm a junior at Xavier, and my favorite part of Xavier is how accommodating they are with the schedule. So I'm an equestrian outside of school, and coming into Xavier, they allow me to have a free period that lets me go out and ride more than I would normally be able to, and it's really helping me with my equestrian career as well as my scholarly career.
My favorite thing about Xavier is how strong the bond is between the teachers and the students. I feel like I can go to teachers with any personal problems at any time.
Oh, it's so flexible and it's incredibly rewarding, and there's a lot of freedom. Like, for example, if I finish my work, I can go to the music room or I can go to the art room, and I feel like I can cultivate my skills in a way that makes sense for me and not just what the school envisions. The school gives you a lot of leeway, which I really enjoy.
My name's Zach Johnson. I go to Xavier Academy and I'm a senior. I like Xavier because I feel like their approach to learning is a more intuitive, engaging way, and so it doesn't feel boring like a typical school. It feels like you're included and you're in a small community, and it's just really helpful and it's helped me learn a lot.
One of the reasons why I like to teach at Xavier is that it's a completely different experience compared to the public school experience that I've had in the past, where I've actually got to know my students. I've actually got to interact with them on more of a smaller class basis, so I really get to understand them and how they work, and I can design my curriculum around them.
My favorite memory from Xavier is in 8th grade when I went to Mexico City with my classmates. We went and explored and went around to historical sites, and we also got to go see and tour the International Xavier School and to meet all of those students, and we went shopping. Oh, we also rode on like those scooters. We like scootered through.
Hi, my name's Autumn. I go to Xavier and I'm in the 10th grade. My favorite memory at Xavier is going with the art class on a field trip to spray graffiti walls with a famous Houston graffiti artist.
Just restart and speak a little louder.
My name's Autumn and I go to Xavier. Oh my god. Hi. Oh wait. I can't do this.
I'm sorry.
So uncut version, right? We got a kick out of it. We thought you would too. So we have, I was a little worried about the time, but we do have a few more minutes. So any other comments or questions or ideas? Carol, when you were talking, if I may, when you were talking, I was curious about your position as a representative of parents. How do you feel in terms of getting access to teachers, administration? I mean, how easy, hard, organized?
It's extremely easy, extremely, I think it goes along with what Randy mentioned, that the kids call the teachers by their first name, and Cooper mentioned too. They just kind of act more like your friend than, I can't help but compare to the teachers at my other kids' school. And they're a bit more formal and a bit more, I guess, sometimes hard to get in touch with, and you have to, schedule. And I've always felt like the teachers at Xavier are really available and just talk to you. They just talk to you about your child, and they're easy, which I appreciate very much.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories. It's very heartwarming and it gives me hope for what you described. What stood out for me is this sense of positioning education as life, not preparation for life, but life itself. And a lot of what you talked about seems to me as originating from very basic humanity, the relationship. And I just wonder, what are the obstacles What's preventing all schools to be like this? I'm not expecting an answer, but it is a challenge.
It's a great question, and if I may, I'll share a few things, because building our school over the last 14 years has been a process, and it is a continuous process. And it hasn't been an easy process. I think that's one of the things for us to talk about. A relational approach requires a lot of time, energy. It's very emotional, very engaged, at times frustrational. So yes, we have helped create this wonderful place where we can be. It's taken a lot of work. We've encountered a lot of resistance along the way. This is not an approach everyone is open to, or willing to learn about, or curious to incorporate into their way of being. So it's also very staff intensive. So I have 150 students at Xavier, and we have a staff of 40 something for them, right? Because time, a conversation when people ask, do you have a few minutes? I've learned it's not a few minutes. I better set aside the next hour, right? If we're really gonna have a conversation, have a meaningful conversation, and really get to what we need to, it takes time. So this idea of slowing down, it's not realistic in an institution of 1,500 to 2,000 students. And I find that our size has a lot to do with our ability to put these thoughts and ideas into practice. And we can go on for a long time talking about this, but I wanted to share at least that initial reaction.
And I appreciate your quote of, why can't every school be like Xavier? Because there's been many times in my time at Xavier that I've said, I wish that I had gone to a high school like this.
Me too. Josie, you're muted.
Is this better if I take it off?
Much better.
So one of the things I think that presents a challenge for some potential teachers or staff members is that you genuinely have to let go of the expert role. You have expertise. We agreed to that. But being the expert who stands in front and tells everyone what they need to do and how they need to do it, and that doesn't really, well, it can work, I suppose. Public schools are doing that. But for people to really let go of that and flatten that hierarchy, and we become a participant in the journey of their education. We do this with them. We are in it with them. And for a lot of students, when you are participating in and part of their journey, they're willing to take more risks because it's something you're doing together. You're not just hanging them out there and they give it a try and they either fail or they pass. It's something you do as a group. There's less risk. I think that they learn more because they challenge themselves more. I think we challenge them more, but you can't pretend that you are with them. Kids can sniff that out real quick if you're not really invested in them. So I think that that's a hard part. And I know that we have in the past had staff who had a really difficult time not being in charge or not being the expert and dictating how everything needs to be done. And in truly collaborating with the students and letting them own part of this process is really, really important. And I think that in the public school system, there are so many students, there are so many, we have really small class sizes. They have a lot of obstacles, and it's what they've been doing for so long. I wish that it happened. I tried doing some of this myself when I was teaching high school, and I got all kinds of resistance. They agreed that they knew it was best for the students, but we just can't do it. That's what I was told.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, of course.
You've talked a lot about your relationship with your students. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship among the instructors? I mean, how often do you meet? How do you do it? Is there kind of training that everybody has to go through? Is it more flexible? I mean, because these are two levels of relationships, right? I mean, it's your relationship with the students, but the relationship between you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Can I talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
When I came to Xavier and I went to in-service, I felt like I was in a therapy session because we were getting to know each other. We weren't discussing how what you do for this system or whatever. We were getting to know each other. And Richard, even in the past, I don't know how many years, the past 3 or 4 years, we've started, rather than having in-service just a week before school starts in August, we start on August the 1st. And we have 2 or 3 weeks of, especially for the new staff and for the old staff, we do all these exercises and getting to know each other. And that's the whole gist of the day. It's not that you have to accomplish something, something tangible, but you accomplish something by getting to know each other. And then we work together so much better once we feel that connection.
So I think it's the allowing ourselves to be known and getting to really know other people. We may or may not agree with a lot of things, but we understand them and accept them. And it's part of that whole top-down acceptance and care for each other.
And you find surprising things about each other, which then play into collaboration. Teachers find that they have mutual interest in a sport or in a particular activity, and then they can incorporate that together. I mean, it's, it becomes a much more personal activity coming to.
If someone's having a,
as far as the learning, I mean, I understand getting to know each other is very important. I mean, it's everything, but in that you have also issues that have to do with learning, with teaching. Do you have some kind of sharing of the way you teach, of the way you go forward? I mean, is this also part of an ongoing process?
So from an administrative perspective, Talia, so during those 3 weeks, in a sense, there are many of us that are involved in those conversations, and we are, in a sense, modeling for our staff that which we're going to ask them to do with our kids, right? So that is part of the process. And there's also the other half. We do this in the mornings. In the afternoons, there are things that need to be done because we are a school. We do have to function as a school, and so there are all these other different opportunities. But what we're getting to the crux of this is that this relational piece, when it falls in place, makes everything else run so much more efficiently, and everything else becomes possible. So, for example, I have a group of staff members that are willing to rework kids' schedules so that we're thinking about splitting the 9th grade into 2 groups. Well, I, as an administrator, or David as the principal, we don't have to do it. Why? Because the staff is saying, like, we can handle that. We'll take care of it. Do you trust us enough to do that? Of course. Thank you for taking it off our plate. You want that done, go for it, right? So it allows for those kinds of opportunities, because as we get to know one another, that level of trust and confidence in each other is what then makes everything else happen.
And a short comment. Tomorrow I'll talk about positioning and repositioning students. But what you have shared with us now is marvelous examples of how that could be. So thank you very much for that. Very inspiring. And I'll get back to you.
Is that a promise?
Yes, it is.
Richard, what time are you meeting tomorrow? And with the students?
I think it's 1:45. I think it's the session called D13B.
Okay, I'm going to